What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Paddock, and today we are going to talk about some unwritten rules of jazz articulation. Before we dive into the video, I'd like to take a second to welcome everybody to my YouTube channel. If you are a frequent visitor, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and leave me some comments below. With the comments, either ask me questions about this video or feel free to make suggestions about videos I should do in the future. I definitely check out my comments. I answer almost all of them. And if someone asks me a question, especially if it's a really good question, oftentimes I will do a video based on that. So thanks for all of your support. I really appreciate it. So let's dive into the video. Have you ever played an audition and you played all the right notes and all the right rhythms, and then you heard someone else play the exact same music and it sounded way better? Or you were playing a transcription that a professional musician was playing, and for the life of you, you can't make it sound as good as they do, and you can't figure out why. Chances are it's because of the unwritten rules of jazz articulation. So there are some unwritten rules that are very important that can completely transform the way that you sound. And they're actually not very difficult, and once you start to learn them, you start to hear them and see them, they become very intuitive because they sound really good and they make the music sound better and they create goal notes. For the most part, all of our articulation is creating some type of goal note. The goal notes are the more important notes. They're the notes that shape the phrase. So if you play all the notes like they're equal, you're never going to have your phrases shaped very well. So bringing out these goal notes is going to completely transform the way everything that you play sounds. And it's not that difficult of a concept to figure out, because once you start to hear it and you start to see it, I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of them today, it's going to easily become a part of the way you hear music when you're playing it. Okay, so let's get started. All of these examples are going to be out of the Charlie Parker Omnibook tune, Perhaps. I love using this transcription for examples because it's very approachable at all levels, and it has all kinds of great phrases in it. Our first unwritten rule is dop a quarter note. Dop a quarter note. Dop means marcato. It's one of those. I like to call articulations by what they sound like, and when I play these quarter notes, they sound like dops. So the reason for that is it's going to put space around it and it's going to make the eighth note lines flow better. So here's an example. You hear that? Listen again. That last note. Dopping that note. If I don't, it sounds like this. And you lose all kinds of power in your playing. The direction doesn't change. It just kind of sits there. We do not want that. We want the dop. It sounds so much better. Here's another example. Dopping that first note sets that phrase up to sound really good. If I don't dop that first note, listen to it. It doesn't have nearly the same character. So we want to dop a quarter note that's on the beat. All of these rules are not 100%. I would say they're a good 80 to 85%. It all depends on what is going on in the music before it and after it. So there will be times where the quarter note does not get dopped. But most of the time, that's going to be a really good guess. If you're like, I wonder what I should do to this quarter note, dop that quarter note and it's going to make it sound better. But if you dop it and it doesn't sound right or the phrase doesn't flow, then in that case, that is one of the times that the rule does not apply. All right, so let's take a look at this next rule. You hear those last two notes? That is the way that a lot of jazz phrases end, with 2 eighth notes, and it should be long, short, and it should sound like bebop. Bebop. That's actually where the name came from. It's the way it sounds when the phrase ends with 2 eighth notes. Bebop. Long, short. If I don't put bebop on the end, it just doesn't, it's not a crisp ending. It doesn't sound clean. It doesn't sound clear. So if you're ending your phrase and it doesn't sound bebop, you are breaking a major rule. And this is pretty much a 100% rule, maybe a 99% rule. If you have 2 eighth notes at the end of the phrase, it's always going to be long, short, bebop. Okay, the next rule is if you have a quarter note off the beat, in other words, it's not on the beat. If it's on the beat, you dop it. If it's off the beat, you're going to accent it. You're going to bring it out. You hear that quarter note there in the middle? You hear what happens when I bring it out? It puts direction in the phrase. It gives you a goal note. It makes the phrase flow way better. This time I'm not going to accent it, and listen what happens. Again, you lose all your power, you lose all of your energy. Just by bringing that quarter note out, accenting it. Like, we don't want to over accent it, we just want to make it a little bit stronger so that it has a little bit more direction for the rest of the phrase. It makes everything sound better. So if you have a quarter note on the beat, dop it. If you have a quarter note on the and, accent it. Next rule, when you are playing triplets, tongue the first note of the triplet and only the first note of the triplet. Do not tongue all 3 of the notes of the triplet. Take a listen. It sounds way better than if you tongue all 3 notes. This is what it sounds like. It just sounds worky. The whole idea of this triplet is to make it sound a little bit smoother, get a little faster motion in there. And when you tongue all 3 notes of the triplet, it sounds really worky. No, don't do that. So we're going to tongue the first note of a triplet. The next rule, and this actually also applies to the end of a triplet, but I'm going to show it to you with 16th notes, and then I will show you with the triplet also. So with the 16th notes, when you play a 16th note run, the next note needs to be your land note. In other words, the goal note. That's where all the notes are going. So you want to bring that note out. When you have 16th notes, especially if it's like 4 or 8, when you have that next note, land on that note. You hear that top note, how I'm bringing it out? That note right there. It gives the 16th notes direction. Notice we're talking about direction and phrasing this whole time with these unwritten rules of articulation. That's the whole idea, is to make these phrases come to life and have more direction and have more life to them. I'm going to do it one time without landing on that A, and take a listen. I don't know if I can do it. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work it just doesn't work when you slur into it. It just does not work. It doesn't sound right. It sounds like you just kind of gave up on life on your saxophone. And you never want to give up on life on your saxophone. So when you have faster notes, so that would be triplets or 16th notes, the next note afterwards, you want to land on that note. Now, on the triplets, listen to how I land on this C sharp after the triplets. You hear that C sharp? I'm bringing that note out. If I don't bring it out, again, we're using these articulations to give us goal notes. The next rule is when you have an 8th note phrase, when you jump to a note, in other words, you're not going up or down in scale-wise motion, there's a larger interval, you're going to bring that note out. You hear that? When I bring those notes out, it gives it a lot more life. Take a listen. That note right there. If I don't bring it out, it almost accents itself because the interval brings the note out no matter what. But if you lean into it and make it stronger, if your line is going to have a lot more direction to it. Here's what it sounds like. Again, I'm going to attempt to not bring these jump notes out, and then I'll play it where I jump them out, where I bring them out. So this is not bringing the notes out. The line sounds perfectly fine. It's a nice swing bebop line with swing eighth notes, but listen to what happens when I bring out these jump notes. It really makes the line come alive. So bring out your jump notes. And if you notice, I was also bringing out direction change notes. So that means when the notes are going up and then they come back down, notes go up and then come back down, or notes go down and come back up, you're going to bring out something. Most of the time it's going to be the top note, but not every time, because sometimes there's a half step in there or some kind of thing that makes it sound better if you bring out the note before the direction change or the note after the direction change. But when you have a direction change, one of the notes is going to come out, and most of the time it's going to be the note that changes the direction. Take a listen. You hear those two top notes? It's a C sharp and a B. When I bring them out, you get those goal notes, and it really brings the line alive. If I don't bring them out, you don't get the same feel. You don't get the same life in that line. It just kind of becomes dry and dead. So again, this is what it sounds like when you bring it out. This last rule expands on bring out the direction change note. Oftentimes when you have a lot of direction changes back to back right next to each other, it creates what I call ricochet notes. In other words, the notes are bouncing into each other. So when you hear those ba ba do ba da bu da, when you have that where it's going up, it comes back down, it goes back up, it goes down, it goes back up, those top notes are going to be your ricochet notes. They're going to be the important notes. They're the ones that you want to bring out. Take a listen. You hear that? You hear those top notes? Those. When I bring those out, the line sounds so much better. I'm going to do it one time without bringing those notes out. And listen to what happens with this line. It's just going to die. Like, it doesn't sound bad. It doesn't sound wrong. It just doesn't sound nearly as good as when you bring out those ricochet notes. Because those ricochet notes create direction in the line. They actually bring out the direction in the line because the line's already going up and down. And it gives you these goal notes. So it gives you this articulation on top of the articulation that you're already doing. Take a listen. By implementing these unwritten rules of jazz articulation, you can completely transform the way you sound, and it's actually not that difficult. The more that you work on these articulations, the more they're just going to start to sound natural. And then even when you're reading music or sight reading music, you're just going to start to automatically do it. And if you're auditioning for a jazz band, or if you just want to sound better on all the lines that you're playing, this is a really easy way to completely transform the way that you play. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video, and if you now understand some of the unwritten rules of jazz articulation, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends, give me a thumbs up, and leave me a comment below. Thanks a lot.